Love's a Drag On by Thunder Magus. Part 3. Chapter 7. Sugar Cube Corner stood out among the rest of the buildings in Ponyville. It almost looked like a gingerbread house. The roof had been painted to look like a graham cracker lined with white frosting. A large cupcake-shaped tower with 3 giant candles stuck out above the roof, and 2 poles colored like candy canes held up the awning above the door. It was easily one of the strangest buildings Sapphire had ever seen. "Hey, Spike!" Sapphire tapped her boyfriend on the shoulder to nab his attention, then pointed at the sweetsy-looking house. "What's that building?" "Oh, you mean Sugar Cube Corner? That's the local sweet shop. Hey, I'll bet Pinkie Pie would give us both a free ice cream cone if we stopped in to say hi." Spike stumbled under the weight of Sapphire's forward momentum. She'd nearly pulled his arm off. "Well, what are we waiting for?" Sapphire shouted, as she dragged Spike all the way inside the bakery. Behind the counter, Pinkie busied herself stirring some kind of batter in a glass bowl. She took one look at the dragons entering her shop, smiled, and set the bowl down. "Well, if it isn't my 2 favorite dragons!" Pinkie hopped up to the counter. "Hiya, Spike, Sappy, what brings you to Sugar Cube Corner? Ooh, did you come to try those cupcakes with chocolate and sprinkles and cherries on top like I told you about? They're really good. I can eat 15 of them in one sitting." "Actually, we just came in to say hi," Spike said. Pinkie's smile grew even wider. "Aw, well that's so nice of you to come see me while I'm working. Why not take a couple of ice cream cones? It's on the house." Lost in sudden thought, Pinkie stared up at the roof. "Or would that be, it's on the bakery? I don't know. What I mean is, they're free." The ice cream cone wasn't the first free thing given to Sapphire that day. Spike had also taken her to Sweet Apple Acres, where she was treated to some of the Apple family's sweet apple pie. Despite her parents always telling her that ponies, like many other creatures, had no reason to trust dragons, Sapphire knew that Spike's friends had all gone through a lot of expense and effort to welcome her into their homes, as if they'd known her entire life. These ponies certainly weren't like the dragons Sapphire had met. These ponies were friendly and selfless. The 2 dragons sat paw in paw on the balcony of Twilight's library, watching the stars appear in the evening sky. They cuddled so close together that the scales on their sides scraped against one another with the slightest movement. "I really like your friends, Spike. They're a lot of fun. Especially Pinkie." "I told you so, huh?" Spike gave Sapphire a gentle nudge, which she answered with a kiss to his cheek. "Okay, you got me there." Recalling the nickname Rarity had given Spike, Sapphire giggled. "Spiky Wikey?" "Hey, don't call me that." "Oh yeah? What are you gonna do about it?" In an effort to pin Sapphire to the ground, Spike shifted his weight towards her. It worked. Sapphire fell over on her back, but Spike didn't take the opportunity to pin her as he'd planned. Instead, he wrapped one arm around her ankle as the dragoness gave him a confused look. "I'm gonna tickle you until you promise not to call me that again." Sapphire giggled and squirmed as Spike brushed the tip of his claw against the sole of her foot. Hard as she fought, she couldn't escape Spike's grip. "No, stop! I won't say it again." The tickling finally stopped, which allowed Sapphire to sit up and catch her breath from the giggling that had squeezed all the air from her lungs. "Okay," she panted. "My turn." With no warning, the dragoness sprang up to tackle Spike to the ground, grab him around the ankle, and run the tip of her claw against his foot. "Okay," Spike laughed, kicking all the while in an effort to free himself. "Okay, I'm sorry." It was Spike's turn to drop to his stomach, gasping for air. Sapphire crawled over to him, bringing her side against his. She rested her neck over his, and their tails entwined like a pair of snakes. Spike's heart pounded. "Spike?" Sapphire asked softly. "Yeah?" I... You what?" Never mind. Can we just lay here like this for a while?" Twilight Sparkle yawned. The last dull light of dusk had faded, and it had been a long day. She could continue her studies in the morning. She used her magic to close the book on plants she had been reading, and rested it on a nearby table. With one more yawn, Twilight trudged up the stairs to her room. An adorable sight just out the window of the patio caught Twilight's attention. The baby dragons were cuddled up in a ball, with Sapphire's neck resting on top of Spike's. A pair of little tails curled around each other, like the stripes on a candy cane. Both had their eyes shut, apparently asleep in their cuddled position. Their heads made two adjacent lumps, with their bodies curving downward to form a single intersecting tip at their tails. Intentional or not, the two dragons had formed what resembled a scaly heart. How cute! With a smile, Twilight summoned a bit of magic energy into her horn. A glittering aura engulfed the blanket tucked across Spike's bed. The cloth lifted into the air, waving like a flag as Twilight guided it outside to the patio, and gently draped it over the sleeping reptiles, being careful not to wake them. They hadn't moved. With that taken care of, Twilight nestled into her bed to get some sleep of her own. Chapter 8. A bright beam of morning sunlight pried Spike's eyes open for the day. He stretched and yawned, a bit surprised to find his blanket draped over him. More surprising was the fact that Sapphire was not laying next to him, as she was before they fell asleep. Spike crawled out from under the blanket and stepped into the library. Downstairs, Twilight busied herself making breakfast, but Sapphire was nowhere to be found. A sleepy-eyed Spike dragged himself down the stairs and into the kitchen. "Oh, good morning, Spike," Twilight said, as she stirred a pot of oatmeal with a wooden spoon manipulated by her magic. "Morning, Twi. Have you seen Sapphire?" "Actually, yeah. She left about an hour ago. She didn't say where she was going, but she gave me a note to pass on to you. It's on the table." Spike turned and walked towards the table. There was a piece of paper there. He picked it up and read it to himself. "Spike, sorry I didn't tell you this myself, but I didn't want to wake you. My parents can talk to me over long distances with magic. They woke me up and said they had something important to tell me. I'll be at our usual spot if you want to meet me again later today. Your girlfriend, Sapphire. XOXO." "Twilight," Spike said, after placing the note back down on the table. "Would it be all right if I went and saw Sapphire after breakfast?" Still stirring the pot of oatmeal, Twilight spoke. "Well, I suppose. But I get you all day tomorrow, okay?" "You got it." After eating his oat-laden breakfast, Spike walked along the countryside path that led to the little meadow where he first met Sapphire. She wasn't there when he arrived. Was she playing hide-and-seek again? "Sapphire!" Spike yelled. He stepped closer to the pepper bush in the middle of the meadow. "Sapphire, I'm here!" Something was wrong. It was too quiet. No answer from Sapphire. Maybe she was at the pond. Spike turned towards the thick blanket of trees that led to the pond. A sense of ill omen sent him running through the dirt path until he could see the water sparkling in the distance. As the trees thinned out, there was Sapphire, sitting on the bank of the pond with her feet in the water. "There you are!" Spike stepped closer and sat next to her. She didn't answer. Something Spike couldn't see tapped the surface of the pond, creating a series of small ripples that cascaded across the water. Looking up, Spike watched Sapphire wipe her eyes and sniff. "Sapphire, are you crying?" Visibly gritting her teeth, the dragoness trembled. She sniffed again, eyes shut tight as if in great pain. Sure enough, a tear crawled its way down her cheek, leaving a wet trail along its path before it dropped off her face and sent another series of ripples across the glittering surface of the pond. "Hey, you're crying! What's wrong?" Spike scooted closer to embrace Sapphire for comfort. Almost immediately, she buried her tearful face into his shoulder. "Spike," Sapphire sniffed again. "My parents." Spike felt Sapphire tremble harder, as if the words were too difficult to speak. Had something bad happened to her parents? "What happened?" Spike asked, after a few seconds of silence. "My parents are leaving Equestria today, and I have to go with them. I just found out. That's why they wanted to talk to me." Spike's fins drooped, along with his heart. "But If you leave Equestria, when will we ever see each other again? I know! We won't! Why do you think I'm so upset? Sapphire grabbed Spike so tight he could barely breathe, but he wasn't about to push her away in a moment of need. I don't want to go, Spike. Well, maybe you don't have to. You can come live with Twilight and me. I know she'd let you, and she could always use extra help. Sapphire pulled herself away and placed her hands on Spike's shoulders. Looking him in the eyes, she dismissed the notion with a shake of her head. No, I can't. They're my parents. I can't just leave them. They're my only family. Don't you understand what that means? Sighing, Spike sunk under Sapphire's gaze. His eyes turned to the ground. I guess I don't. What do you mean? Well, Twilight's not my real mom, of course, but she is the closest thing I have to one. I don't know my real parents, or even if I have any brothers or sisters. Unable to fight the sympathy in her sadness, Sapphire wrapped Spike in another bear hug. I'm so sorry, Spike. I never knew. Not your fault. Sapphire trembled. All the tears, all the sadness she'd been holding back, came out when Spike returned her embrace and rubbed her back for comfort. She cried and sobbed into Spike's shoulder, and a sound that chilled Spike's heart with regret. It was enough to move Spike to tears himself. It was hard seeing Sapphire so sad, but to know he wouldn't be able to be there for her the next morning was too much. Spike, Sapphire's shaky voice asked, you're not going to cry too, are you? I'm trying not to. Please don't. I'm crying enough for the both of us. Though it took every fiber of his being, Spike managed to choke down his tears long enough for Sapphire to calm down. Once her sobbing had stopped, she let go of Spike and turned back to her reflection on the surface of the water. Both dragons sat down on the bank of the pond and dipped their little feet into the water as they wiped their eyes. You know, I wasn't lying when I said you're the sweetest dragon I've ever met. All the other boy dragons I've met have been mean and rude. They'd push me down, throw rocks at me, pull my hair. Some of them would even hit me. Are you sure they weren't just teasing you because they like you? No, this was different. All of them, they lived by old dragon rules. If you can beat another dragon up, you're better than them. If you're mean to someone and they don't fight back, they're weaker than you. If you can take something from another dragon, it's yours. They'd steal from me, steal from my parents. Sometimes they would even... Sapphire shut her eyes tight to fight back more tears. Call me ugly. Well, you're by far the prettiest dragon I've ever met, if that helps. Spike watched his reflection blush at his own comment. And that's what I like about you. Sapphire scooted closer to lean her head on his shoulder and wrap her tail around his. You're not like them at all. You're sweet and kind and giving. What if I never meet another dragon like you? Not like I'm much of a catch, Spike answered as he looked his reflection over. Look at these short little arms. It's the strength of your heart I like, not the strength of your body. Sapphire gave Spike a kiss on the cheek to reassure him, then pulled her feet out of the water and stood up. Maybe we should stop this. Maybe you should go before we make my leaving harder than it already is. A mournful sigh escaped Spike's snout before he stood up, face to face with the girl who had enraptured his heart, the girl he could be seeing for the last time. Scraping his foot across the sandy bank, Spike struggled for something appropriate to say. What was the right thing to say when your heart was in pieces, and could be the last thing you say to the girl in front of you? I don't know what to say, or what to do. It was too hard for little Sapphire to look Spike in the eye. Instead, her sights were set toward the ground as she twisted her foot into the sand. Maybe just a quick goodbye would be easiest. More tears welled up in Spike's eyes. But I don't want to say goodbye. Me neither. But do we have a choice? Sapphire's head still hung towards the ground, prompting Spike to step within arm's reach. Gently, he lifted Sapphire's chin up with a finger to force her to look him in the eye. Goodbye, Sapphire. Don't worry. We can still write to each other, right? Just remember that trick I taught you. Sapphire sighed as she stepped forward to embrace him one more time. I don't want to leave, but I have to. I love you, Spike. Don't ever change. Love. The words set Spike's heart on fire. No one except Twilight had told him they loved him. Was that what Spike had been feeling for Sapphire? That sensation, warm and fuzzy, yet alarming at the same time? Spike took a few seconds to look deep within for the answer, then spoke. I love you too. A dark, ominous shadow engulfed the duo. Spike pulled himself away from Sapphire to see what it was. Above them, two enormous reptilian forms loomed. Their powerful bat-like wings split the air like the winds of a tornado. One of the adult dragons was a dark shade of blue with a humongous muscular form. The dragon beside him was much sleeker and a lighter shade of blue that was closer to Sapphire's. We're ready, Sapphire, said the sleeker dragon. The larger dragon stared Spike down with the ever-watchful eye of a protective father. Finish your goodbye with your friend and let's go. Sapphire's sights had been set towards her parents, but now she looked at Spike once more. Spike brought his attention away from the enormous adult dragons and returned Sapphire's gaze. Goodbye, Spike. I hope we can meet again someday. Until then, don't forget to write. I won't forget. With one last quick hug and a kiss on Spike's cheek, Sapphire followed behind her parents, affording one more look back at Spike before she vanished into the thick blanket of trees. What now? Spike wanted to collapse right there on the sandy bank and cry. He'd heard the phrase, love hurts, before, but until now he had no idea just how much it could hurt. It felt like Rainbow Dash had gone into a sonic rain boom and crashed right into his heart, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. To Spike's surprise, Sapphire's father turned around in mid-flight, gazing down at the young dragon. Now what? It was like he was staring right into Spike's soul. Sapphire spoke fondly of you over the last few days, little one. The dragon's deep, booming voice seemed to shake the entire ground. An honor no other male dragon your age shares. I've not seen her smile so wide. Thank you for being so kind to her. I would hope that we meet again someday, if only for her sake. Farewell. With that, the large dragon turned back to follow his wife, soaring above the sea of trees. Once he was sure he was alone, Spike rested on his back, watching the clouds roll by. When he could no longer fight it, the tears flowed down his face. Chapter 9. Ponyville seemed much less brighter than usual when Spike returned, dragging his drooped body along the dirt road that led back to Twilight's library. A strange, empty feeling had persisted inside his gut ever since Sapphire left. It was the saddest feeling he'd ever experienced. Was she really gone for good? Would he never hear her voice, the soft, sweet sound of her giggle, or feel the warm touch of her paw again? Not even a rainbow-colored form following above was enough for him to lift his head. Boy, you sure got me good yesterday, Spike. Nice prank, but don't let it get to your head. You just caught me off guard, that's all, and I'm giving you a fair warning that I'll find a way to get back at you. Spike had heard Rainbow Dash's voice, but her words washed over him. He simply maintained his moping posture without making a sound. Dash stopped her forward movement, holding her hoof to her mouth in a mix of awe and sympathy as she watched Spike walk solemnly along towards the library. Were those tears going down his face? She watched him come into town from the direction he usually took when he left to visit Sapphire. That could only mean... Uh-oh! Dash hovered in place as she observed Spike. He was heading back home. Best to check on him and make sure he was okay. I still don't understand why you're so jealous of Spike and Sapphire, Rarity, Twilight said. The two unicorns stood in the middle of the library, where Rarity had paid a visit in order to complain about her lack of a love life. Of course, Twilight was the pony every pony came to when they had a problem.
Well, it isn't fair!
Rarity's curled mane danced as she stomped her hoof in protest.
Why haven't I found love yet? They're probably 10 years younger than I am. Why must it take me so long?
Twilight raised an eyebrow.
Probably because you're too picky?
Rarity narrowed her eyes.
You could have at least given me the dignity of hesitating before you answered.
The sound of the door opening brought the unicorn's attention away from their conversation to see Spike walk into the library.
Oh, Spike, Twilight said. You're back sooner than I thought you'd be.
Without paying any heed to Twilight or Rarity, Spike made his way across the lobby and up the stairs to Twilight's room. Not so much as a sound followed.
Spike?
Scratching her head in confusion, she looked to Rarity for an answer.
Oh my! Didn't you see the look on his face? The poor little dragon is crushed.
A hovering form entered the library through the still open door. Rainbow Dash made her way to the others.
Hi, Rainbow, Twilight said. What brings you here? I just saw Spike come in here looking real upset. I wanted to make sure he was okay.
Dash paused to think of an excuse to check on Spike, other than she was legitimately worried about him, which wasn't outwardly cool. She did have a reputation to uphold, after all.
Because I have nothing better to do. Excuse me.
A pink-haired Pegasus appeared underneath her rainbow-colored companion. Once she noticed all eyes were on her, she hung her head, scraping her hoof across the floor.
Oh, I hope I'm not interrupting, but I saw Spike looking really sad. Is he all right?
Twilight paused to look to the top of the stairs for a few moments, then turned back to her friends.
I think he and Sapphire just broke up. He should be okay, in time. We simply must check on him,
Rarity replied. The other ponies nodded in confirmation, then followed each other upstairs into Twilight's room. The little dragon was there, curled up in his basket, a sobbing, shivering mess. Rarity was the first to approach him.
Spiky Wikey, sweetie, whatever is the matter?
What happened, Spike? Twilight asked.
Yeah, tell us what's up,
Dash said.
Are you okay?
Fluttershy added. All Spike could do to answer was shake his head no. Twilight tapped her hoof impatiently. Are you going to tell us what happened or not?
It's over. Over?
Rarity asked.
Sapphire's gone. She left Equestria with her parents.
Dash gritted her teeth in sympathy as the other ponies puzzled for something to say.
Oh, bummer, huh? Okay, look, never mind what I said about paying you back for yesterday's prank. I won't do it. Rainbow,
Twilight snapped. Dash cupped her hoofs behind her back, fighting for the right words to say. It certainly wasn't awesome to be too sappy and sympathetic.
I'm sorry, okay?
The cross gaze remained pasted on Twilight's face. Still not good enough? Dash sighed and wilted before planting her hooves onto the ground so she could rub Spike's shoulder in sympathy.
Look, Spike, I'm sorry it happened, and it stinks. Is there anything I can do to help?
Rainbow dared a glance over her shoulder at Twilight, who smiled and nodded in approval. Again, Spike answered with a negative shake of his head.
Are you sure?
Rarity asked.
I can bring you some nice, delicious gems.
Not hungry. Tears welled up in Fluttershy's kind blue eyes. It hurt to see Spike so upset, especially since he refused gems. Gems! He'd never turned down gems before. Fluttershy knew he was in a great deal of grief. Her own tears streamed down her face, wetting the yellow fur on her delicate features. She wiped the tears from her face and sniffed. Look, every pony. Twilight's voice called the other ponies' attention away from the heartbroken dragon. I think Spike just needs some time to himself.
Is he going to be okay?
Fluttershy asked. He'll be fine. In time. Spike shivered at the thought. Thank you, Dr. Twilight. He needed relief now. The herd of ponies left the room and trotted down the stairs, save for Twilight, who remained at Spike's bedside. She tried to think of what she could say to cheer the little dragon up, or at least give him a peace of mind. Only when he heard the door shut after the last pony left did Spike pick himself up and wrap his arms around Twilight's front legs. He buried his face into her chest and cried.
Twilight, it's not fair. Why does it have to hurt so much?
Indeed, he'd never felt pain like this before. Twilight shook her head as she rubbed Spike's back to comfort him.
I wish I knew what to tell you there, but it's just part of being in love.
A small groan sounded from Spike. Why did every pony insist on making love seem so grand and fantastic, as if it were the key to ultimate happiness? How come no pony ever told him love could hurt this much? They never talked about the ugly side of it. Of course, most ponies avoided unpleasant topics in general, so that might account for it. Even so, nothing could have prepared him for this sort of emotional torture.
Well, make it stop,
Spike cried.
Sorry, I don't know any spells to cure a broken heart. You just need time. Can you be a tough little guy until then?
The only answer from Spike was a loud sniff.
Look, I'm going to give you some time to yourself and catch up on my studies. I'll be right here in the library if you need anything, okay?
Okay, Spike whispered. After gently pushing Spike away, Twilight gave him a smile to reassure him everything would be okay, then retreated downstairs. Once she disappeared, Spike threw himself back onto his bed. That night, Twilight's mouth opened into a big gaping yawn. The unicorn looked out the window. It was already sundown. Easy to lose track of time when you're pulled inside a good book. After a big stretch of her legs, Twilight shut her book, set it on the table, and stood up. She hadn't heard so much as a peep from Spike since earlier that afternoon. Better check on him on her way to bed. As she made her way up the stairs, a startling thought came to mind. He was growing up. Fast. Maybe this would be the right time to let him go off on his own. To spread his wings with a certain young dragoness, just as she'd thought about earlier that week. The thought extracted quiet tears from both her eyes, but she was determined to do the right thing. She couldn't keep Spike shackled to her forever.
Spike?
No answer. Twilight walked further up the stairs, wiped her eyes and approached Spike's bed.
Spike?
Still curled up in his bed, Spike's answer was a weak moan.
Listen, Spike.
Twilight dropped to her haunches next to Spike's basket bed.
You're a big dragon now, Spike, and part of being a big dragon means having to make some tough choices.
Spike could only sigh at Twilight's words. Now he was getting a lecture on top of his broken heart. Could this day get any better?
Just hear me out,
Twilight replied, knowing that Spike's yawn was in a half-hearted protest.
Now, I'm going to let you make one of those tough choices. If...
The unicorn had to turn her head and gulp down the tears before she could bring herself to continue.
If you want to leave and go find Sapphire, I promise I won't get mad, and I won't try to stop you.
For the first time since he laid down earlier that day, Spike moved. He rolled over on his back to look Twilight in her violet eyes.
What? You're growing up, Spike. I can't keep you forever.
You'd just let me leave?
You don't know how lucky you are, Spike. I don't even know what it's like to be in love. If being with her really made you happy, I'd be happy.
Spike could only look up at Twilight, mouth agape in awe. Sapphire. He could be with her again. What he wouldn't give to hear her voice one more time, to hold her paw again. He was free to go after her. No strings attached.
I'm going to get some sleep.
Twilight's voice snapped Spike from his trance-like state.
I'll let you think about it. Whatever you decide, I know it'll be the right choice. Good night, Spike.
As Twilight blew out the torches, blanketing Spike with darkness, the little dragon laid there and thought. What about his friends? What about Twilight, the pony who had been like his mom, his sister, his aunt, his friend? What in Equestria was he supposed to do? The next morning, the beams of Celestia's sun greeted Twilight as she opened her eyes for the day. Stretching and yawning, the memory of the night before filled her with a strange sense of dread. She closed one eye and dared to aim the other at Spike's bed. Except for his blanket, it was empty. Twilight sighed and climbed out of bed. So that was it. Spike was really gone. A framed picture of Spike and Twilight on the unicorn's desk caught her attention. It only took a second for tears to run down her cheeks. As long as she lived, she would never forget that little purple dragon. Twilight let out a sigh. Best to get some breakfast, if she could keep it down. Slowly, Twilight stepped downstairs, head hung in sorrow. Meanwhile, Spike slowed his running to catch his breath in an open field. As soon as he stopped, he doubled over, panting. He'd been running to find Sapphire ever since the first light of dawn. Now the sun was almost risen to noon point. Sapphire's last letter stated she passed through Baltimore earlier that morning. Spike groaned in frustration. He still had a long way to go, but his stamina was beginning to give. At this rate, he'd never catch up with her. No, he couldn't give up now. After wiping the sweat from his forehead, Spike continued to run under the blue, quiet sky. Later that afternoon, Twilight's library was oddly quiet. The unicorn sat in her favorite spot, unable to even open a book. When she made that offer last night, she wasn't prepared to miss Spike so much so soon. She pondered what the dragon was up to, where he was, if he was safe, or if he'd found Sapphire. It was a deep sorrow that disabled Twilight to do anything but mope.
"Oh, Twilight,"
Rarity said, as she stepped into the library.
"How is Spiky Wikey doing? Is he okay?"
The mention of her former assistant's name only caused Twilight to sigh through her nose and shut her eyes to block the tears. Rarity gave the unicorn a look of concern.
"Twilight, are you all right? You look ill."
Twilight couldn't bring herself to look at Rarity, only hang her head in regret.
"If you're looking for Spike, you won't find him here. He's gone." "Gone?"
Within seconds of hearing that word, Rarity became misty-eyed and held her hoof to her mouth in disbelief.
"What do you mean, gone?"
"He left to go look for Sapphire." Rarity slammed her hoof with a stomp of protest.
"Oh, it is on! She hooked up with Spike and made him happy. I can deal with that."
The white unicorn began pacing the room with a cross, unblinking look of fury.
"But now she's taken him away from us? I shall not, no, I cannot stand for this. We must go and get him back."
"Forget about it, Rarity," Twilight answered with a shake of her head.
"I gave him the option to leave." "You... what?"
Rarity stopped her pacing and sat down by Twilight's side, so she could wrap her foreleg around her friend's drooping neck.
"Twilight, that was a grand thing to do, letting little Spike follow his own heart without thinking of yourself."
Twilight grimaced and let the tears flow.
"Maybe, but I miss him so much already."
Once again, Rarity held her hoof to her mouth. Twilight must have been in a great deal of grief. As much as she resented the idea of getting her well-groomed coat messy and wet with tears, she scooted closer to allow Twilight to cry on her shoulder, and rubbed her shoulder to soothe her.
"There, there, darling. Things have a way of sorting themselves out. I, too, will miss little Spiky Wikey."
That evening, the last light of day trimmed the horizon with an orange glow that looked like a fire in the distance. Spike's running had now turned into a slow trudge as he dragged himself along the countryside. The songs of birds had been replaced by the songs of crickets, and the grass was damp with dew. Finally, Spike drained the last of his energy and flopped down on his back. Lying there, he realized he was too tired to even move, even if he wanted to. His arms and legs simply wouldn't respond. All the little dragon could do was look up at the clouds in the sky and listen to the crickets. It was so lonely out there. Lonely and quiet. One of the clouds was round, with a thin long wisp emerging from the top of it.
That's funny. That cloud kinda looks like Rarity,
Spike mumbled to himself. There was a puffy round next to the Rarity cloud.
That one looks like Pinkie Pie. My little Spiky Wikey, this is so generous. Happy birthday, Spike! My #1 assistant. Aw, shucks, he's such a hard little worker. I've never seen a baby dragon before. He's so cute. You know what, Spike? You're actually pretty awesome.
Like an echoing hall, Spike's mind rang with the voices of his friends, the friends he left behind. Out here, he was so alone. No pony to talk to. No pony who cared. He was doing this to be with Sapphire, so why did he feel so empty? In that moment, tears ran down his cheeks. It hit him full force. What had he done? He was making a terrible mistake. The day after the next day, Celestia's sun shone through Twilight's window, prying the unicorn's eyes open for the day. Begrudgingly, she sat up and rubbed her eyes. It was still hard knowing she wouldn't wake up to find Spike downstairs preparing breakfast, but the unicorn was determined to fight her depression as best as she could. What better way to start than with some breakfast? As Twilight descended the stairs, she slowed down at a familiar scent coming from the kitchen. Oatmeal? Twilight lifted her head to peer into the kitchen. There was Spike, with his heart-patterned apron, preparing breakfast.
Spike!
The unicorn's voice snapped Spike's attention to the lobby, from whence Twilight walked into the kitchen.
Morning, Twilight. Spike! You came back. But why?
Spike stepped down off his stool to let the oatmeal come to a boil. I'm not going.
Why not? She meant a lot to you, didn't she?
Yeah, but... Spike walked forward to embrace Twilight. Not even Sapphire's hugs could beat the sense of security that his surrogate mother's soft fur gave him.
You mean more.
More tears welled up in Twilight's eyes. Happy tears this time. She was wrong to ever think that Spike didn't like her anymore.
Oh, Spike.
Twilight wrapped a foreleg around his back.
I'm so proud of you for making such a tough decision.
Spike let go of Twilight and looked to the floor.
I'm gonna miss her, though. Do you want to write a letter to Princess Celestia about it?
As he looked up at Twilight, Spike smiled.
I think I will.
Dear Princess Celestia, it's Spike. This past week I was given the opportunity to learn a bit about friendship, both good things and very hard things. I learned that new friends can seem to come out of nowhere, even when you think you're alone. I also learned that one of the hardest things about friendship is having to say goodbye to a good friend. But just because you've said goodbye doesn't mean you won't see each other again sometime. And even if you fall in love with a new friend, sometimes it's your oldest friends who stay the closest to your heart. Your faithful servant, Spike. After a deep inhale, Spike blew on the parchment, which vanished into a streak of magic sparks and shot off towards Canterlot. However, the little dragon could only stare sadly at the ground.
Feel better?
Twilight placed her hoof on Spike's shoulder, causing him to lift his head up and look behind his back.
Not really. You'll feel better, in time.
Spike's eyes shot open in astonishment at a rumbling deep in the pit of his stomach. A few seconds later, a belch forced a scroll from his maw.
Well, that was a fast reply,
Twilight said, as she watched Spike unravel the parchment.
What's it say?
It's from Sapphire, Spike answered. He clutched the full, flat parchment in his paws and read it out loud. Dear Spike, I'm so sorry things couldn't have worked out the way we wanted it to. My parents said Equestria isn't really the place for full-grown dragons. I miss you so much already, but I can't blame you for going back to your friends. Don't ever change. You just keep being the sweet, wonderful dragon I know you are, in case we meet again someday. I won't forget about you. Write back soon. XOXO. Sapphire. See? Twilight prodded. Keep writing to her, and you'll know where she's at. Someday you'll meet her again. Yeah, Spike sighed as he rolled the parchment up. But until then... The little dragon walked over to the desk where Twilight had kept a series of pictures printed from the day he brought Sapphire to Ponyville. He shuffled through them, searching for the perfect one. His paw stopped on a photo with him and Sapphire embraced in a hug, smiling widely. With a deep breath, he held the picture in front of his face and sent it on its way. Sapphire walked on beneath her parents, head hung in sorrow. It felt like it was all her fault for breaking Spike's heart. She only hoped he wasn't hurting as much as she was. Her parents had tried to convince her where they would wind up would be many more boy dragons, but she knew none of them could be as generous as Spike. Dragons simply weren't known for generosity. A startling but familiar rumble formed in Sapphire's stomach before she belched out a flat piece of paper. She snatched it out of the air to take a closer look at it. There she was in the picture, hugging Spike tightly. Despite her sadness, looking at the picture only made Sapphire smile as she held the picture firmly against her torso. The end. Well, that certainly was a great story. And that's a lot coming from me because personally I don't really read stories with OCs or fan characters in them, whether they're ponies or dragons. So the fact that I enjoyed this story is actually saying a lot. Overall rating for this story, I give it a solid 9 out of 10. It was just that good. As some of you may already know, the author of this story, Thunder Magus, also known as the Lord Thunder on Fanfiction, is actually working on a sequel to this story. I probably am going to read it, but I'm waiting for a few more chapters to come out before I start. So that leaves us something to look forward to. Well, it's happened again, ladies and gentlemen. You've wasted another perfectly good chunk of your life listening to me. I hope you have enjoyed this fanfiction reading as much as I have, and I hope to do another one real soon. So until next time, the one and only Dark Shadow here, signing off.